Today we have a major update in the legal battle between Ron DeSantis and Disney, and this is in the federal case, so it is a pretty important update regarding this entire battle. As always, I am Andrew Esquire, American attorney, specifically Florida attorney specializing in special district and property law, which is why I have been unstayed on top of this case and will stay on top of every single development. So make sure that you are liked, subscribed, and stay tuned on this channel. So today we have a motion to disqualify, and we're going to get into the dirty details on this video about this motion, what it is, some of the background, and where this is going to go. Now, obviously, if you guys have been paying attention, there's two separate cases. There's a state case in state court and a federal case in federal court. And we are still waiting. My prediction is that eventually there will be some action to either stay or dismiss the federal case, but that pending, we have a motion to disqualify the judge. And I think this is a excellent preliminary motion because this is something that is very important for the rulings going forward. If you have a judge that is predisposed against your side, predisposed against one side of the issue, you're not going to have a fair trial. And listen, the American judicial system is about due process. It's about the rule of law. If you cannot have a fair trial, what do we have? It's not really a trial at all. If the judge is in the tank for one side, that's not going to be justice as it should be in America. And I know people like to think that judges are always above it all and that they have no biases and they're totally removed from things, but that's unfortunately not the case, particularly when you get appointees, political appointees, that's going to be a problem. And Mark Walker, the judge in this case, is no exception. And we can see that he doesn't just have slight political leanings. This isn't just a guy who happens to be a registered Democrat. He happened to vote for Biden or Obama. No. This is a person that has demonstrated two clear things. And we're going to talk about both of those. Number one, a hate for Ron DeSantis. And number two, a failure to understand this case at all whatsoever and actually what's going on. In fact, it seems like Judge Walker doesn't understand Florida law or what's going on at all in this case. In fact, it seems like he just understands the mainstream media narrative, like most normies. In fact, many of you out there in the audience that have been paying attention probably understand the actual fundamental substantive law better than Judge Mark Walker. I'm not joking on that. So let's just jump into the first part of this motion here, and let's just show you the motion itself. This is the motion here. It was filed on the 19th, so this is fresh off the press. It's 33 pages. We're not going to go line by line because I, of course, Legal Mindset, have read it and will summarize it for you. I am always here to translate the legalese into things that you guys can understand and are easy to consume and easy for you guys to process. So when you see these updates, these court updates, you guys get exactly what you need to get and not the BS, not the long version. So this motion is to disqualify the judge, Mark Walker, under 28 U.S.C. 455 because the court's impartiality in this matter might be reasonably questioned. And they involve claims that defendants, i.e. the state of Florida and Ron DeSantis, retaliated against Walt Disney World based on Disney's viewpoint. And here's the kicker. Here's where he's really damned. And this is the proof they're offering. That this judge, who, by the way, in this document, they refer to this judge as the court, right? You can see Chief Judge Marky Walker, parentheses, the court. So whenever it's the court, it's really referring to him. It's a term of respect. It's kind of a specific legal term. So I know it can be confusing. It can sound like they're talking about the entire judicial system. They're just talking about this one specific judge, but they're still doing it in a respectful way, despite the fact that the state of Florida is opposed to Mark E. Walker. So this judge, Judge Walker, out of nowhere. That's what sua sponte means. No, it's not a Harry Potter spell. Sua sponte means out of nowhere. Like literally for no good reason, without prompting, just kind of an excited utterance. They just blurt it out. He offered Disney as an example of state retaliation. So he just said that without understanding the facts, and he did it in two separate cases, completely unrelated to the underlying case here. So in one case, and this is the response of the judge, I'll read here his statement and exactly how he references Disney. So he said, what's in the record, for example? Is there anything in the record that says we are now going to take away Disney's special status because they're woke? He just said that out of nowhere. No prompting. I mean, once again, these guys were talking. Ms. Velez here, this is her statement. Your Honor, there's a lot to parse here. And the first thing I want to draw the court's attention back to is what we think that the inquiry and the asking is harm in and of itself. That's under the Baird decision. Of course, we're primarily attacking. And then he cuts in and gets into Disney's special status and them being woke. So the question he was asked was not about Disney. He was not prompted a question on Disney. He just threw that out there, which shows that he bears a bias and a lack of understanding. Because remember, I have 2 points here. Number one, he doesn't like DeSantis. But number two, which we'll hit on here, is he doesn't understand the issue. So he says Disney's special status. What special status? Disney, as the Walt Disney World Parks company, that Florida subsidiary, they have no special status. That Disney itself does not have special status. Reedy Creek did. Reedy Creek no longer exists. Now it's the Central Florida Tourism Oversight District. So that hasn't been taken away, the district, but the district isn't Disney. If that's true, once again, we are talking about multiple crimes. And it's kind of funny because you'd think that he would actually understand, and a lot of these judges don't understand these niche areas of law, but there would be federal securities violations. And actually, I don't blame Judge Walker, because frankly, he's probably never dealt with bonds. Bonds are actually something, especially these dirt bonds, as we call them in the biz, these public finance bonds, municipal bonds, these are dealt with on the state level. So a federal judge like Mark Walker would never actually deal with bond validations. He doesn't understand state public finance law and state bond law. So he has no idea that there's no special status for Disney whatsoever, that this district is completely separate and divorced from Disney. Of course, Disney has time and time and time again attempted to obfuscate this story, attempted to hide this fact, attempted to make this unclear. But on this channel, when I repeat this over and over and over again, I am hoping that, hey, the Disney shills, they check in and they realize that under Florida law, there's no way that Disney had a special status. Reedy Creek, the former Reedy Creek, was entirely separate from Disney as an entity, right? It is a creature of the state, much like a city or a county. A special district can be created and destroyed at the whim of the state. So that's one statement. Well, there was another statement. It did not end there. If it ended there, it might be easier. But look here. Here's another case, a second time when Mr. Walker, or Judge Walker rather, decides to do it again. Mr. Cooper said, Your Honor, I don't think so, because we certainly concede there's the possibility of that form of enforcement against institutions. And that is, as you say, a recent example of authority being exercised, I guess here, the Board of Governors. And then he says, out of nowhere, and then Disney is going to lose its status because they have made a statement that ran afoul of state policy of the controlling party. So once again, out of nowhere, he brings up Disney and he brings up this special status, which we've established does not exist. It's all in his head, or rather in Disney's corporate shill media and in Pixie Dust Twitter. They may believe that Disney had some sort of special status. That does not actually exist. So he makes the statement out of nowhere, and he says it's a punitive action. So the meaning that it is something that was taken specifically to harm Disney. By the way, once again, my point number two, that this judge does not understand the facts. This did not, remember when they got rid of Reedy Creek, or they sunsetted Reedy Creek? This didn't just affect Reedy Creek. It affected 5 other districts, 6 in total. There was no singling out of Reedy Creek. Many entities, those 6 entities, were affected. It was not just one entity. So Disney can't even claim that it was just them. That argument is completely blown out of the water. And all government actions are presumed legitimate unless they are made specifically for no reason and just purely to hate on you. There's no economic reason, there's no policy reason, there's nothing else. And even this judge said, right, that running afoul of state policy is the issue. Well, that's not something that is a problem. Look, if they are doing something, or if a business or series of businesses is doing something that's against state policy, the lawmakers can change policy. So let's say, for example, that Florida didn't like, or let's say Florida wanted everybody to be able to ride a manatee. That was part of their state policy, right? You know, and they wanted to change that over. They could change that over if they so wanted to. Or let's say something more, less ridiculous. Maybe something like, let's say, for example, smoking, right? They wanted to change rules and regulations regarding smoking because policy was either for or against smoking. They can go ahead and do that. That's their thing. So if they want to change policy regarding special districts that were created in the 1960s, that's fully within their power. There's nothing wrong with that. The state and the legislature are allowed to legislate. I know that sounds crazy because in most democratically led legislatures, nothing gets done, or it's just an endless cycle of pork, but that's actually what should happen in a properly functioning legislature. So let me go back to that first point. He hates DeSantis. And why do I say this? Why do I bring up this hate for DeSantis? Well, this is a nice, good tweet that pointed this out. This is by Mark Caputo. So shout out to Mark here for highlighting this. But DeSantis moves to disqualify Judge Mark Walker because of two instances where the court out of nowhere offered Disney an example of retaliation. Walker has frequently ruled against Disney, frequently, in several other decisions. And this is decisions that are wide-ranging. There's an act called the Stop Woke Act. He spoke up in that. And also, and perhaps most deranged of all, Mark Walker, Judge Walker, was pro-Rona restrictions. Yes, this judge was pro-Rona restrictions. He was pro-lockdown, pro-shutdown of the businesses and bars and restaurants and everything else. This judge was all for it. He was sipping the Kool-Aid. He was on that Fauci juice, you know, all that good stuff. And he was mad over laws, various DeSantis laws, varying from the cruise line to COVID. But he was mad because of DeSantis and imposing rules around the voter registration process and regarding voter registration during Rona. And you saw this as October 8th, 2020. So this judge has had multiple issues for years, you know, because we're going back to 2020 here, years. He's had years with DeSantis specifically and fighting DeSantis laws. And every time somebody wants to bring an anti-DeSantis measure, they try to get it in this judge's hands. This has been Disney's strategy all along, the entire time, which is absolutely crazy. But you can see that, and that's why they motioned to disqualify this judge. Now, will this work? Who knows, right? Who actually knows whether they'll be successfully able to do it? That's obviously in the hands of the court. That's not in my hands. I'll stay posted on it and keep watching it, which is why you guys should make sure you're liked and subscribed, because I'm always going to provide the most thorough analysis on this issue. I may not always be first because, hey, I'm in Asia, guys. I can sometimes wake up and I see the news a little bit later, but I will give you the best analysis on these particular issues and drive in deep on them. I also want to shout out to a lot of my collaborators, Valiant Renegade, WW Pro, Jonas J. Campbell. These guys have been great on this. And I actually want to give a shout out to Neon of Clownfish TV. He had this great comment, which I thought was very timely here, which was Walt Disney was a Republican who didn't think much of unions or communists. He probably would have gotten along great with Ron DeSantis. And I think that's a good note to wrap it here, is that Disney has fallen so far from where they were and where they probably should be in the past. And I think it's about time they align not just with modern reality, but with the people of the state of Florida that certainly would like to get back to business. Until next time, guys, peace.